The printing press.
One of the most innovative and helpful inventions in history. It brought rise to modern technologies such as typewriters and electronic printers.
Other technologies, such as movable type, pre-existed the development of the printing press, but were further developed by this invention.
Precisely. Martin Luther utilized this device for his drive for reform. Though unintentional, this machine greatly facilitated the spread of Protestantism throughout Europe. Let's start at the beginning. Originally, before the printing press came about, the Chinese often used a system called block printing to produce paper products, from cards and money to books. In this process, a wooden block was carved with the desired design, coated in ink, and pressed onto paper, leaving behind the words carved on the block.
However, this was an inefficient and labor-intensive process, and it took enormous amounts of time and resources to produce even the smallest block. If a slight tweak was wanted in the original design, the printing block had to be disposed of, and a completely new one was carved. Also, people carved entire text on the single blocks instead of individual letters and words, meaning that each time a different word was printed, a whole new series of blocks was commissioned.
This slowed down the printing process and made paper goods extremely expensive. So finding books among the common people was a rarity. Another method, common in Europe, that was even more time-consuming, was the common practice of having people write out entire books. Not only did this take a long time to write out, you first had to find an original copy of the book, making the process take months to years and increase mistakes. This left literacy rates of the common serf nearly, and in most places, completely zero due to the extreme price of text.
However, that all changed with the arrival of the printing press.
By the mid-15th century, several printmasters were refining their technique, verging on perfection of movable type. The first man to demonstrate this innovation was Johannes Gutenberg, circa 1454, at around the age of 56. Gutenberg's greatest product of his invention was his 42-line Bible. It was finished the year he died in 1456.
After 9 years, this prolific invention spread to Italy, where the first two books from there were printed, a Latin grammar and a book by Cicero. The first English book pressed was Canterbury Tales by William Caxton.
There's absolutely no doubt that printing made a long journey from starting in 200 as block printing, evolving over 1,000 years into Gutenberg's press, and finally into our modern digital press and all of the mass media we see around us today, including TV and radio.
The printing press paved the way for countless innovations in printing.
These include such inventions as the laser printer in 1969, the thermal printer in the 1970s, the inkjet printer in 1976, 3D printing, and digital press in 1993. Perhaps one of the most important printers was Martin Luther, born November 10, 1483, in Eisleben, Germany, then part of the Holy Roman Empire.
He wrote the 95 Theses on the power and efficiency of indulgences. This writing outlined the wrong of the Roman Catholic Church. The church was growing corrupt. In the Middle Ages, the church began having people monetarily pay for sins.
These indulgences were criticized for Luther for being a gross desecration of the original intention of confession and penance. Luther strongly disputed their claim that freedom from God's punishment of sin could be purchased with money.
The 95 Theses were said to be posted on the church doors of the Castle Church. However, that is widely contested as a myth and nothing more.
Still, it is plausible considering the importance of church doors as bulletin boards at the time.
According to some, the 95 Theses gained enormous popularity over a very short period of time. This was surely due to the new ease of printing provided by Johannes Gutenberg's press. Luther's ideas resonated with people regardless of class, status, or wealth, at a time when such concepts were critical to the social order and highly divided.
Around 1510, Pope Leo X retorted to the 95 Theses with a document outlining the Catholic magisterial, or the authority of the Church, and Luther's mistakes.
His refusal to retract all of his writings at the demand of Pope Leo X in 1520, and the Holy Roman Emperor at the Diet of Worms and Assembly of Ministers at Worm, Italy, in 1521, resulted in his excommunication by the people and condemnation as an outlaw by the Emperor.
Clearly, Martin Luther needed the printing press in aiding his quest for reform. Without the power of press, his ideas would have never spread so far and wide.
The Reformation was originally intent on reforming the Catholic Church.
This failed. However, many new Protestant or Christian but not Catholic churches were reformed. These include Lutheranism, formed by the ideals of Martin Luther, Anglicanism, and baptism, to name a few.
The Reformation lasted about 130 years. This revolution was sparked by the final push of the publication of Martin Luther's 95 Theses.
It has been argued that the bubonic plague was responsible, at least in part, for the start of the Protestant Reformation. Many thought it was punishment from God for the sins of the people and the church.
The invention of the printing press led to the Protestant fervor of translating the Bible and getting it to the followers of their church.
Following the excommunication and condemnation of the Reformation by the Pope, John Calvin's writings were influential in creating a loose consensus among different parties in Switzerland, Scotland, Hungary, and Germany, among other places.
Eventually, the Protestant Reformation burst into the 30 Years' War. Initially, it was over Catholicism and Protestantism. However, it was more complex by the end of the war. After one of the most destructive European wars was over, the Treaty of Trent was signed in 1648. The Reformation had ended. Clearly, Martin Luther needed the printing press in aiding his quest for reform. Without the power of the press, his ideas would have never spread so far and wide.
Perhaps his ideas would have never started the Protestant Revolution. There would have only been the Catholic Church.
Idealistic diversity is needed for healthy growth. For without different beliefs, there are few arguments. And that is what is required for progression and change. Without Luther and his aid from Gutenberg's press, we may not have any of the same cultural and social ideas, from politics to home life.